episode 257 of the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. What a week. Let's start the show.
We are now the defenders of the stronghold of democracy and of equal opportunity.
You and I, as citizens, have the obligation to shape the debates of our time, not only with the votes we cast, but with the voices we lift.
The people are looking for honest answers, not easy answers.
The very word secrecy is repugnant.
Clear leadership.
And we are, as a people,
not false claims and evasiveness and politics as usual.
Opposed to secret society.
But ours was a nation of the ballot, not the bullet.
And a secret proceedings.
As a people, we cannot afford to let any group of citizens or any individual citizen live or labor under conditions which are injurious to the commonwealth.
Black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American, young, old, gay, straight, men, women, folks with disabilities, all pledging allegiance under the same proud flag to this big, bold country that we love. That's what I see. That's the America I know.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
There is nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America.
Welcome to the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. I am your host, Chris Hahn. I'm at Christopher Hahn on X, Christopher Hahn NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Those are my socials. Watch me on News Nation. I'm there all the time. Thank you for liking, rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the pod. Exciting stuff, America. I was at the DNC last week, which is why there was no fresh pod. You might have heard a best of. I hope you enjoyed it. Man, first of all, it's now, I've been home for 3 days as I record this, and I am still exhausted from the convention. It's been a while since I've done a convention, and I was a much younger man the last time I did it. So, you know, the 13 hours at the convention hall and then, you know, hanging out afterwards and beforehand didn't really matter too much. This convention was worse because I'd do 14 hours at the convention and they'd be like, all right, we'll have you on the 6 a.m. Chicago time broadcast, so be ready. Or I'd have the producer say, yeah, we need you at the convention hall at noon for a hit, and you might as well just stick around for your 4 o'clock hit because we don't know how long it's going to take for you to get back inside the building. Now, I got there early every day, so I never had a problem getting in and out of the building. The last day of the convention, I had a hit at 4 p.m. Chicago time. A hit, by the way, that's TV lingo for an appearance for those of you who are new to the podcast. So I had a hit at 4. It was like 4:30. And I decided, you know what? I'm having no problem getting into the building. I'm going to catch a Uber from the hotel at around 2:45. I'll get to the building at like 3:05, and I'll get through security. Well, I caught the Uber. It took an extra 15 minutes in the Uber because there were different traffic patterns because that was the day Harris was speaking and there was a big crowd. And I got there at about 3:15 instead of my usual 15-minute Uber ride, and it took me a little longer to get into the building. But I made it to my hit. I mean, I had about 20 minutes to spare, but it was a little nerve-wracking waiting on that security line. I will admit. And it wasn't that long of a line. It's just that I had no lines the prior, 3 days at the convention. So it was a wild thing. So let me start. This whole show is somewhat dedicated to my convention experience, and of course, I'm going to talk about the debate over debates at the end after the break. But it's going to be a short show, as you can tell. I have virtually no voice because I lost it during the convention, and I still haven't gotten it back yet. But let's fully gotten it back. I mean, I got it back enough to do this pod. So, let's just start with the city of Chicago itself. Now, if you listen to conservative media, you would think that Chicago was a burning hellscape. And I encourage you to go on my Instagram feed, which is Christopher Hahn NY, and look at some of the pictures I've taken about Chicago. Now, I've been to Chicago a couple other times before this. It's one of my favorite cities. At least this time of year. I mean, in the winter, I don't want to be there. But, this time of year, late August in Chicago, I mean, there is no better city in America, in my opinion. No better big city in America. Very little humidity. Gets nice and cool at night. Doesn't get too hot during the day. And they have a waterfront there along Lake Michigan that I think should be the envy of the world. I mean, it is amazing. First of all, you could run for, I don't even know how long. I never outrun that trail. But you could run for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. I mean, probably 50 miles without ever having to cross a street, right? On a paved trail. And it's pretty freaking amazing. In the city of Chicago itself, you're passing by the Bean and other, monuments, the Soldier Field. They have an aquarium. They have this observatory, Navy Pier. But you're right in the middle of the city. I always tell the story about the first time I went to Chicago. And, the first time I went to Chicago for an extended period of time was to do the Chicago Triathlon about 20 years ago. And, we wanted to do an open water swim, and I knew that we'd be swimming, where the boats were right by our hotel for the actual race, right? There's like a little marina, and they set up like a little mile course in the marina. So a couple days before the event, we get to town. Our coach says, hey, let's go do an open water swim at the beach. I go, the beach? He goes, yeah, we're going to go to the beach. So we get in a cab. The cab drops us off at Ohio Street, which, appears to me to be the middle of the city, right? And it is the middle of the city. You're right in the middle of the city of Chicago. And then we go underneath an overpass for Lakeshore Drive, and lo and behold, there's a beach there, Ohio Street Beach. And we went swimming, and by the way, the water was crystal clear like you were in the Bahamas, and I am not kidding. Okay, that's the city of Chicago. I had a blast in Chicago. I had Italian beef sandwiches. I walked almost everywhere. I got lost one day on my run. I went the wrong direction, ran deeper into the heart of Chicago. People were helpful. They were nice. I wanted ice cream at like midnight one night. I got back from the convention. I was like, I want to get ice cream. I went over to walk to a Circle K. No, I mean, I'm sorry. Every city has its problems. And I'm not saying Chicago doesn't have problems. Every city has its problems. But Chicago is a great American city, and I truly appreciate the time I had there. And I despise all of this vitriol that the right has aimed particularly at Chicago. I remember doing appearances the week before the convention, and my Republican counterparts on the other time would sometimes say, be safe in Chicago. Right? And they were all hoping that these protests were going to burn down the arena. I mean, they wanted this to be 1968 so badly. They were all praying for it. And guess what? It wasn't. There were a couple of protesters, but not that many. And they weren't being violent. They were exercising their rights under our Constitution to express themselves politically. God bless them. But they did not terrorize the convention goers. They did not terrorize me. I had a media badge on, right? And I'm walking around the park where the protesters are. They were very nice to me. They wanted to tell me why they were protesting. It's fine. I'm tired of this nonsense on the right. It's got to stop. I mean, it's absolutely got to stop. They need to grow up. They need to understand that cities are good places. Just because the people there don't vote for them and maybe have progressive views doesn't mean that they're dangerous hellholes, because they're not. In fact, they talk about San Francisco and New York as if it's the worst place in the world. Yet why is it so expensive to buy an apartment there? Like, why does it cost? I mean, forget about rent and taxes and everything else. The asking price. This is how you know, right? Just go on Zillow or whatever you're using to look at real estate these days and Google what it costs for a one-bedroom apartment in New York City. Not to rent, to buy. And San Francisco. And then compare that to a 4-bedroom house like in a red state somewhere outside of the city. Because they don't like the cities in their own states either. And I think you'll understand why people want to live in the cities, right? Because there's a lot to do. I didn't get to do a lot of it because I was exhausted and I was at the convention almost the entire time. But there's a whole lot to do in Chicago. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back with more. You're listening to the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. Welcome back to the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. I am Chris Hahn, at Christopher Hahn on X, Christopher Hahn NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Watch me on News Nation It's news for all Americans, and I'm on there all the time. So, let's talk about the convention itself. Let's talk about what happened there. First of all, if you've never been to a convention, they're just like big networking fests and parties, really. First of all, the place was jammed, particularly the night that Harris spoke. It was jammed. Now, if I had one complaint, it was that the speeches, at least on the first 3 nights, went way late. I mean, Joe Biden didn't start speaking till 11:35. Now, truth be told, I was supposed to fly out on Sunday night to the convention, but my flight got canceled. There was some bad weather here in New York. And I couldn't get a flight out on Monday, so I flew out on Tuesday, a 6 a.m. flight, which means I had a 3 a.m. wake-up call. And I was scheduled to go on the air after Joe Biden gave his speech, but I just was going to do it from home. And I was waiting. He was supposed to go on at 10:30. He didn't go on until 11:30. And now I had gotten bumped because they weren't going to extend their coverage past midnight. And his speech went to after midnight. And then, of course, I got up at 3 a.m. I get in a car driven by a friend of mine who was actually bringing his daughter to the airport for the same time. She was going to Nashville. And I get on the plane. I fly to Chicago. I get in a cab, go to the hotel. I decide I got to go for a run right now to keep my run streak alive. I go for a run, come back, and just pass out for like 3 hours. Because I just said, I got to get 3 more hours of sleep, but I know I'm going to be in the convention hall late. So I take that and I go to sleep. Get up, go to the convention, I meet my producer, grab my credentials, get in the convention hall, do a couple of pregame hits on TV. Again, hits, TV appearances, hits. So, and then I'm supposed to go on after Obama. Barack Obama, not Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama introduced Barack Obama, and that goes late, so I wound up getting bumped from that, and I'm just hanging out in the convention all night, waiting for that. But of course, I wanted to see Obama. Now, let's talk about that for a minute. First of all, Michelle Obama gave one of the great convention speeches, I think, of all time for a non-candidate, non-political person, somebody who doesn't appear to be running for any office anytime soon. In fact, I think she really likes her life. Everybody talks about her as like the Democratic, next Democratic candidate. I don't think so. I think she likes her life, and I don't think she wants to ruin it by entering the world of politics. And then Obama came in and he did his speech, and I think everybody's talking about, what they called the penis size joke when he talked about how Donald Trump is obsessed with crowd size, and then he made the hand motion. I thought that was great, right? I really did think it was great. But the night was, really fantastic, and the energy in the room was amazing. And we've talked about this before on this broadcast, right? I mean, the Democrats are now energized in a way that can only be explained, by a near-death experience, right? The Democrats were done. Joe Biden was not winning this election, and they knew it. And this convention, which I was scheduled to go to anyway, would have been like a morgue, would have been like a funeral. There would have been no feeling that we could get this done by the party. But when he dropped out, really made that selfless act. And everybody was like, oh, the Democrats put Joe Biden on so late because they were trying to hide him. No. First of all, I thought he gave a great speech. They put him on late because things ran long. Things ran long on, Obama was on late the next night. Walz was on late on Wednesday. Not as late as Biden. They got a little better each night. But they got it down for Harris on the third night. They wanted to make sure she was on in the 10 o'clock hour, and she was. But, look, here's some of the moments of me. First night, they had a woman speak. They were talking about, access to reproductive health care. And everyone was talking about their, stories of having to deal with these red states laws that are limiting women access to reproductive health care. even women who are miscarrying and their lives are in jeopardy. And the last woman to give her testimonial was a young woman, probably no more than 25. And she started out by saying, I was a cheerleader, homecoming queen, field hockey champion, straight A student, and a victim. And then she went on to talk about how her stepfather sexually abused her and how she took her first pregnancy test when she was 12 years old. And that the laws in this country, where she lives now, in her state, would require her to carry that rapist child to term. Now, you may be pro-choice, anti-choice, whatever, but it was a powerful, powerful image. And then Andy Bashar came out and spoke after that, and I thought that was a pretty good speech. Bill Clinton's line, don't count the lies, count the eyes. I thought was a very, very good observation that I think we should all heed. And let's just hear it for Coach Walls. Okay? I mean, the guy, 3 weeks ago, none of us heard of him. I had, but most of us haven't heard of him 3 weeks ago. And he was on that stage giving a speech like he'd been doing it his entire life. And I loved it. Oh, one more point about Michelle Obama. I've been on a lot of campaigns, and I've been around a lot of people who are waiting to be asked to do things. And Michelle Obama said, not enough time for you to wait to be asked. Just go out there and do something, right? Consider this your invitation to get involved. I thought that was great. I mean, anybody who's been involved with local politics as long as I have know exactly who she was talking to. And then the moment arrived on Thursday where Kamala Harris gave her acceptance speech. I thought it was a great speech. Now, before the speech, let me just say, everybody in that building thought that either Beyonce or Taylor Swift or both of them were coming to the convention. They did not. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think if they would have came, we would have all been talking about it. And it would have been like the highlight of the convention for everybody instead of her speech, which needs to be the highlight of the convention. But that was the talk of the convention. And she came out and she gave a biographical speech and an inspirational speech, exactly what she needed to do. Now, again, I'm waiting to go on after the speech, and it's getting late. And Bill O'Reilly's having an argument with Chris Cuomo, and Bill O'Reilly sounded like a guy who should have been shaking his fist at a kid whose ball went onto his lawn. Get off my lawn. That's what Bill O'Reilly sounded like. Now, I get it. Bill O'Reilly's making some coin, doing podcasts now, and he's been around. But, grunch, I mean, is grumpy old man a new, demo? That's what it sounded like to me. She gave an inspirational speech. The speech is not supposed to be, here's my white paper on what's going on and how I'm going to do things to make it better. That's not what these speeches are about. They're introducing yourself to the nation, and they are telling them generally what you want to do. And you need to inspire the people to go out and work for you for the next, 2 months. And that's what she did. And she did it well. And by the way, all this talk from the press, well, she doesn't have specifics in her plan. Trump has never had a specific to any plan, and he was president, including when he was president. How many plans are we waiting for the next 2 weeks to get? Oh, we'll get his position on abortion. He was supposed to give a big speech. Remember about 3 weeks ago? He said he'd be making a big speech in 3 weeks on abortion. He hasn't, and he never will. Don't hold your breath. Remember, every other day, it would be, oh, yeah, you're going to get my healthcare plan in 2 weeks. Well, it's been 9 years, and we still haven't had his healthcare plan. But here's the bigger thing, America. I get asked about, why doesn't Harris have more plans? All the time. I've been in politics for a long time, my entire life, since I was a teenager. No voter has ever asked me for a white paper on a person's positions. They just want to know where you stand. And they want to know, will you fight for them? And I think that this convention was all about Kamala Harris will fight for you. Donald Trump will only fight for himself. And I believe that to be true. I believe that Kamala Harris will fight for you. And Donald Trump doesn't care about you at all, even if you're one of his supporters, even if you're his most fervent supporter. I mean, think about the guys who spent a year and a half developing Project 2025 for Trump, probably at his insistence. The minute it was unpopular, I don't know anything about Project 2025. That's him. The minute you are not valuable to him, the minute you bring him any pain or suffering or discomfort at all, he will kick you to the curb, no matter who you are. So I don't know why there are still people in America that thinks he will fight for them. He won't. And that was the message of the campaign. Don't count the lies, count the eyes. He is about himself. So I think the convention did its job. And we'll see, later this week, we'll see what kind of bounce she got out of it. And of course, RFK Jr. Wants to be the wet blanket on the Democratic Party that turned its back on him. He's an idiot. What an entitled little bitch that guy is. Think about this for a minute. The man comes from the dynasty of dynasties in the Democratic Party. None of us would even know who he was if his name wasn't Kennedy. He'd be some weird guy standing on a corner, probably with a sandwich board on and a weird hat. And the Democratic Party was going nowhere in the primary, so he decided to run an independent campaign, and he got out to a quick start, and now he's getting about 1% in the polls. Kamala Harris wouldn't take his phone call. Donald Trump would. So, because Donald Trump is transactional. And he endorsed Donald Trump. But the minute he says something crazy that is tied to Donald Trump, and believe me, if anybody who's been watching RFK Jr. for the last year and a half knows, he will absolutely say something ridiculous and crazy. I mean, he already has. I mean, the guy killed a freaking bear and then drove around with it in his trunk. Let's just start there. But believe me, he will say something crazy the next couple of weeks. And Donald Trump will be like, who? Who's that? Never heard of him. That's what's coming for you, RFK Jr. But he endorses Trump the day after the convention. Like, that's going to matter. Like, anybody cares. Let me explain something to you. Those two Nepo babies deserve each other. Okay? They deserve each other. So, good luck, with your new bromance. I don't think it's going to last long. And I think ultimately RFK Jr. will be jettisoned from this like Donald Trump jettisons everybody else. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, come back. We'll talk a little bit about debates and wrap up the show. All right, welcome back. I'm Chris Hahn, as you probably know because you're listening to this as a podcast. And it's got my name on it and my picture. Pretty soon I'm going to be doing this on YouTube as well because somebody thinks it's a good idea for me to put my made-for-radio face in front of a camera when I do this. I mean, I guess, look, I've been on TV for 15 years now. I guess somebody still thinks I'm TV ready, camera ready. I mean, so I will be doing it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. I just the question I have is, do I do it? And, maybe you want to email me. Go to ChristopherHahn.com and email me. Tell me what you think I should do. Should I suit up for this, or should I do it like right now I'm doing the podcast? I literally just got back from Starbucks with the dogs. It's National Dog Day, and brought them for pup cups, even though they don't need it to be a holiday for them to get pup cups. They get it whenever I'm home because they are the most spoiled dogs you'll ever meet. And I'm in a hat and I'm in a t-shirt that's like 20 years old, and I'm like doing my thing. I mean, I guess I got to dress up a little bit. Probably not going to wear this t-shirt, but do I got to suit up? I don't want to suit up. I like just doing this podcast the way I feel like doing it. So I'm going to figure it out. And that'll happen sometime in mid-September. We'll start doing that in front of a camera, and hopefully people will like it. So anyway, let's close on this debate about debates. I'm pretty sure they're going to debate on September 10th on ABC. I don't understand this whole thing that Harris doesn't want the mics muted. I get it. Trump's a maniac, and you want everybody to see what a maniac he is. But the cameras will be on him, and they will see him talking, even though the mic's muted. It's fine. I also don't think she really wants that. I think she just wanted to get a rise out of him, and I think that this is just setting up for the next thing they argue about. That's just me. I think they will debate on September 10th, and I think they will debate one more time after that, too. They won't debate on Fox. You know, that's not going to happen. He might have a rally on Fox that they'll pretend is a debate, but he's not going to, she's not going to Fox, right? Why would she? Now, look, part of me says she should. Not in the format that he wants to do and that they've agreed to do it in, like with a big studio audience that they pick. No way. But if she wants to go talk to Brett Baer one-on-one, or even Dana Perino, who, you know, is a Bushy, one-on-one, I'd do it. I mean, I've watched Gavin Newsom and Pete Buttigieg do incredibly good work on Fox. I mean, I used to think I was the best Democrat that went on Fox. I think now it's Pete Buttigieg. And I think Gavin Newsom's a close second. Now, they have more gravitas than me because they have big positions. Pete's probably a lot smarter than me. Let's let me be real, right? Pete's smarter than me. I wasn't going to Harvard, okay? And he's pretty damn good at it. But I went on Fox for 12 years, and I had some major debates there. And my feeling was, if I could ever get that audience to think critically, I have done my job. I have won the day. So, you know, if Harris wants to go on Fox in a, you know, less hostile environment, go on with Martha McCallum or something. That's not a bad idea. Or maybe even have a debate with Trump, with Brett Baer and Martha McCallum in a studio with no audience. I don't know. I think sometimes you got to go to their turf and take it to them. Is there risk? Absolutely. And by the way, I don't know that she needs the risk. I don't know that she needs to take that risk. But I encourage Democrats to go there. And, you know that some of the questions are going to be unfair. Just be prepared to ignore it and move on and say what you want to say. But look, there will be a debate. Trump and Harris are going to debate. And Trump's going to look like the old man he is. And by the way, how long did it take me to go from saying Biden was ready to rock to Trump's an old man? I don't know, 30 seconds? Like immediately? I 30 seconds too long. Immediately. He's the old man now. He is way too old to be president of the United States. How could somebody who has a very limited future ahead of him be concerned about your future, especially if this guy's never been concerned about anybody other than himself his entire life? So that's where we are. You know, that's the state of the race right now. He's the old guy. She's not. And when they debate, it's going to be very clear that he is old and he's lost more than a couple steps and she's ready to lead, right? They, of course, are lowering expectations for her like they do for everybody, which is crazy. I mean, I saw her tear apart Bill Barr, the Attorney General of the United States, a man who had served 3 presidents. And he looked like a fool when she tore him apart at the Judiciary Committee. And I will tell you, I think Bill Barr has more knowledge of government than Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump, of course, is not bound by truth or facts or reality. So it makes it a little harder to pin him down. And Bill Barr, has a little bit more sense of reality, even if he lies too. So, there's that. But there's going to be a debate and we're all going to be entertained by it. And will it matter? I don't think so. I think she's going to win. Now, I think we got a lot of work to do. But I think the wind is at her back because I think people are just sick and tired of Trump. As we said, the last couple of weeks, it's the same old stuff all the time. Whining, complaining, me. Don't count the lies, count the eyes. And I think the Democrats and Harris did a pretty good job the last couple of weeks changing from Trump is a threat to democracy to Trump is unfit to lead and he has a personality disorder that you shouldn't trust, right? I mean, if you've noticed, the convention, there wasn't a whole lot of threat to democracy. There was some, and a lot of that came from Republicans, by the way, who spoke at the convention, like Adam Kinzinger. But there was also a lot of, this guy's weird, he's strange, and he only cares about himself. And maybe it's time for you to vote for somebody who's going to be thinking about you. So I'm optimistic. That was my DNC week and my wrap of this week. So I hope you liked it. So right now I'm going to remind you, as I always do, to seek the truth. Question everyone and everything, even me. Seek the truth. I know it's out there, and I know you'll find it if you look for it. And I'll be back here again next week to tell you the truth as I see it. I'm Chris Hahn. Thanks for listening to the Aggressive Progressive Podcast.